had a
All
really
right,
similar experience, but
all right, and we're recording. All right, so hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. This is the fourth vlog, and I got Eddie back on here again. We got some stuff to talk about tonight, and we were swapping stories, relapse stories before we started recording, and some of the psychosis, like the beginning stages of the psychosis that I used to go through with hearing voices and like entire recreations that I was making up in my head that almost like manifested outside of me that I would respond to and got myself in a lot of trouble and wound up in a lot of sticky situations because of it. And Eddie's a part of the Reddit community, and he had shared this past week that he was kind of going through a similar experience, and I'll let him divulge what he wishes to divulge about that. And yeah, so that's it. So hopefully tonight we can get into a little bit of like the some of the gang stalking aspects of this, and what the reality is behind gang stalking, and some of the different phases that one can actually go through, and the triggers that will set that off and actually deepen it and worsen it. So with that, I'll let you lead us off there, Eddie.
yeah, no problem. I'm gonna open this window real quick. It's kind of stuffy in here. I'll
Yeah,
be
yeah,
here
yeah,
in 2 seconds.
yeah. Go for it.
All right. So yeah, thanks for having me again. Thanks for talking.
Yeah,
Looking
thanks for coming
forward.
back on.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about all this stuff. So the whole experience, this phenomenon, and everything else, the voices and everything. I guess the last time we talked, I had been doing. I had some. It's been about a year, a little over. It's actually coming up on a year of 24. In November, it will be a full year of hearing them like 24/7, right? Since the day they never left is what it is really. And when that originally happened with me, I had a relapse a while back in November. I had a relapse of with also methamphetamine, right? And I had a really bad situation that happened, and they came into my life and they introduced themselves as people that I was acquaintances with, or people in my life. So they mimicked these voices, create
Right.
this whole narrative of people in my life, and that's how they introduced me to it. And I ate it all up. I fell right into it originally.
You almost don't have a choice, you know what I mean? Because it's like it's such a it's such a phenomenal thing that's happening in your mind, and your brain is like starving for an explanation. You'll believe anything. It's like that,
Yeah,
thank you for pacifying my brain, because the brain is in such a state of confusion, and you're so desperate for an explanation. They could tell you, it's Queen Elizabeth back from the dead, and you're like, "Oh, okay, good." And you'll start.
yeah. You're
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And in fact, I was writing about this earlier today because I was trying to go through my experience in general, the whole thing, to see if I can compare certain situations from the beginning stages to the current stages I'm at right now. And
Okay.
yeah, there's the part where they introduce themselves, or the introduction where you're fully aware and there's communication happening between the both of you now at this point, and you're
Right.
100% aware that there are people who are, or something is speaking with you. At that point is when I felt as if I was so overwhelmed at this point that I would literally believe absolutely anything that they said to me. I was just
Yeah.
thirsty to understand, right?
Right.
I think that's similar to other people from what I understand. I think. But it's a really crazy situation. You're very interested in understanding what's happening. There are voices in your head, and you're trying to understand why that's even happening. So anything that they can say, and I think that they use this to their advantage at this point, at that phase.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I wrote about it before. I think they use our vanity. Like they use my vanity to their advantage heavily, because like I thought I was something special. Like I
yeah,
really thought like this is some like crazy thing. Like I've been chosen, like I've
yeah,
been picked to partake in some I don't know, but I
yep.
I really felt like that I was unique, and that nobody else was experiencing this. And then it wasn't until I got on certain social media platforms, I'm like, "Oh shit, I am not alone in this at all," and this is
Wow.
like something that a lot of people go through. For the longest time, I believed I was on a game show. Like,
Mm,
I believed that I was on some sort of extraterrestrial game show where they used humans as like their own source of reality television.
wow.
And then like whatever drugs that I was partaking in were just ways to give them stronger strings to pull, to like I was their little puppet. Like they would watch everything that I would do. And then the more drugs that I would do is the more control that I gave to them to do as they pleased and make a mockery out of me. I remember I went through that phase for a while, thinking that it was some sort of like, but and still thinking my vanity was still playing with me, and thinking that there was some prize to be won at the end of this game show. You know?
Wow. What
Yeah.
did they give you a prize?
No, no. What I mean, the prize is what you give yourself.
Yeah.
When you really sit there and learn how to like analyze what's going on and go. I don't want to get too far into it now. But yeah, you kind of have to reward yourself for getting through this madness.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. I agree. They had done a similar thing to me where they put me into a game show to decide if I was on drugs. Pretty much, they would make me
Yeah,
all 24/7. They would have these people come to apparently, and they would do this session where they would decide whether or not I was on drugs, and there would be a random person who gets to see what I see and hear what I hear, and they would have to decide whether or not I was acting as if I was on drugs, and based on their vote, would decide the fate that I had to live. And at the end of
yeah,
this, they were like, "Well, we're going to give you the no drugs award or the no meth award or some whatever they were saying to me." So I
yeah,
was like, "Oh wow, I'm doing really good. I'm getting through all this shit. I'm going to do great." It was all bullshit. It was all just like to
yeah,
build me
yeah.
up, just to bring me back down. I realize now, looking back into it,
Dude,
and
it's crazy. Some guy, I don't want to say some guy, a community member on Reddit made a post this past week, and I don't know if it was pretty lengthy, but it was fascinating. I mean, and scary. I mean, what they did to him. They really, I mean, they were patient with him. They came in very benevolent for a long period of time. They'd come in and out like very benevolent, like we're keeping an eye on you. Um, we just need you to do a few things. Like we're really relying on you to do the next right thing here. Like, thank you so much for being the type of human that you are. Like, you're one of a kind. All this like really build up. And then it went silent for like I don't think he gave like an exact amount of time, but when they came back, they were like, "Man, you really fucked up."
um,
Like we can't. I know, dude. Like he was devastated. He really had it in his head that he fucked it up for the whole community.
oh
He's like, "I'm
no,
so terrible, absolutely terrible." They do these things to really build you up. Now, my buildups and breakdowns that I went through, were very extreme. Like it would be like a week of building me up and then just bam, you're a
yeah,
fucking idiot. And then just, slap me down. But man, with this guy, it went on for months. This whole like very almost like mystical experience that he was about to embark on and become like, some sort of like metaphysical property himself. And then they just were like, no, you're not good enough.
So
Yeah.
I wonder why it is that they do that. And I think you're right about the vanity thing. I think that people are so self-indulged by whatever it is that they assume that they're the next Muhammad or whatever it is out there. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
think we're all just a regular average person, to be honest, but we're so
Right.
consumed at wanting to be something better. But
Well, a lot of people have that, that messiah complex. Like I speak to people on Discord and Reddit that generally feel like they're the next Jesus or they're because they get this, they're bolstered up. So, and I think what a lot of this comes down to, and now this is me after having gone through it. And okay, so it's two things. One, it's what you make of it. You can because a lot you can get stuck in the angry, frustrated part of it. When they break you down, you just get stuck in that. And you're like, "Fuck you, I don't fuck,"
yeah,
But if you can learn to build yourself back up, and then when they try to do it again, that's when you're like, "No, no, I'm okay being me right in the middle." So I
yeah,
think as humans, we tend to think too highly or too lowly of ourselves. Very rarely are we right in the middle. And that's what all these extreme things are that they do.
yeah,
They'll make you feel like you're the only person that matters in the world, and then they'll make you feel like your life is non-existent and it doesn't even matter.
yeah,
And if you continue to follow through with that up and down, it'll tear you apart. But
hmm,
eventually you gotta find yourself right in the middle and learn to ignore all that
yeah.
bullshit. But it's very difficult to do that.
No, it is very difficult. I think it's natural to want to be something better. I feel like you're something special, or having really
Absolutely.
hard feelings on yourself.
Absolutely.
That can be a downfall for us. I know that a lot of it in the beginning for me, there was a lot of the stuff that they would do, and they would constantly shame me for my own thoughts. Right. So one thing that they would do is I would be thinking normally, and I'd see somebody be like, "Oh, that person's pretty big or pretty fat or whatever." Just thinking naturally. There's nothing wrong with thinking of something, right? You're not actually saying this to hurt someone's feelings. Thinking it
Right.
natural. they would destroy me with this thought because I always wanted to try being somebody good or something. Like I just didn't want to. I wanted to not judge anybody. That's something I've always been trying to work better at, right? And they knew this, and they would destroy me with this. Every single time I would think of a thought, the first thought that comes to your mind, they would absolutely make me feel like I was the worst person in the world. In the beginning, I really, really, really felt that. And now I just don't give a shit at all anymore. And that
No,
growth
and
is
you
something.
can't.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't. But you know
yeah,
what? Um, I was raised Christian, but so I'd say since 2017, heavily into Buddhism. And one of the big things that the Buddha always talked about was getting rid of our labels, you know, because we're always in a state of labeling something ugly, pretty, skinny, fat, you know, and we do this because we're stuck in a cycle of clinging and aversion, right? All throughout the day, every day. This is what we're doing, right? We're saying, I don't like that, get it away from me. I like this, I want more of that. And we're stuck in this constant cycle of push this away, give me more of this, right? And that's clinging and aversion. And I think that, for me anyway, that's how I chose to view that aspect of this phenomenon. And I said, I need to break that because that's the cycle of cause and effect that the Buddha always talked about. And for somebody like us that are in recovery, you know, I lived a good portion of my life clinging to drugs. Give me more of that. Give me more
yeah,
of that, or like push that away. I don't want that. It's like this lifestyle of like indulgence and fulfillment where you really have to learn how to like kind of just maneuver through life unaffected by the clinging and aversion of everything around you. Um, yeah, so
yeah,
that's how I chose to look at it. Because dude, I went through the same exact thing. And I'd get into a state of flagellation where like I was like whipping myself
yeah,
constantly because everything that I would look at. And then I would almost get to a point where I was being um unintentionally inappropriate, right? I would think a thought simply because I didn't want to think that thought, right? So like if I saw like a hot girl walking down the street or something, and and immediately I would have the thought, like, yeah, I want to have sex with her. So, like whatever. And then they would harp on it. Like there'd be three voices that are harping on it.
yeah,
And you really have to learn to, like not, and it was almost like I got to a point where the only reason that I was having those thoughts was because I didn't want to have those thoughts. The very, the very notion of not wanting to have a thought already formulates it.
oh,
And then you're You know what I mean?
yep. So that
Yeah,
right there, what you just said, I don't know if this happened to you or if anybody else has experienced this, but this is something that they used to do to me in the beginning that was terrible. And it was the thought of, let's say I didn't want to think that person was fat or that girl was cute, whatever it was, anything like this, right? I was thinking of something because I wanted to have a positive thought. They would turn it and do the inversion of this thought. So if I didn't want to think that, I would hear myself say that thought that I was so ignoring to say, whether it was a racial slur, whether it was like
yeah.
something I've always avoided wanting to say. They would turn it all the way up, so I would hear myself say the inversion of that thought, and that
Wow.
destroyed me for months. He would do
Yeah.
this months, and
How did you get through that?
I it was really difficult. I at one point I was like, okay, so the only way to get through this would be to think of nothing. That's the only way to do it. It's impossible to have no thought because even if you're meditating, you have a thought that comes in. When that thought
Yeah,
comes in, they would they would turn it always to be the inversion and really loud. So I'd hear myself saying it and I'd have to just sit there and meditate and try to meditate to keep my mind as calm as possible. But all they had to do was say one word. As soon as they said one word, it would trigger it and it would be off. It would be
yeah,
impossible to get my mind back. And they actually got me to sit in a room meditating for I think 12 hours without moving, just sitting in a chair in a couch because I was trying to just stop my mind. And they were like, if you stay still like this, we'll let you go. I believed it and tried to meditate for 12 hours sitting there by myself in a room. And obviously they didn't let me go. It was just lies. But
yeah.
um, I
How
just
about let
got
me
used
let
to
me
it.
ask hold on, let me ask you something real quick. Just because I'm pretty sure I have a pretty close estimate number in my head. How many times have they said to you that they're gonna let you go? Or like Merry Christmas. Or that's what they used to say to me all the time. Merry Christmas. This is the end, or like
Oh,
this is
man. They never actually said that to me, but they did say, he's going to let you go if you get through this test. And that's what they would
yeah,
always say. That they said for like months. They would say that almost every single day.
yeah.
Um, but they never actually did it. They never said Merry Christmas to me, though.
Oh, dude,
Remember?
I used to get Merry Christmas all the time. Happy birthday. Or I used to get Marco Polo. They go Marco, and then my brain would respond Polo.
Oh my god,
You
that's
know,
hilarious.
dumb
That's
shit.
funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah,
Looking, it's frustrating in the moment, but yeah, looking back at it, it's like, what the hell? Like, I here's something that's I've never heard people talk about. Have you ever heard them laugh?
I say this all the time lately. That no, I have never
No,
heard them laugh
never,
once. They don't laugh.
never. They
So
don't
I've
laugh.
been saying that, and now they'll say it back to me lately. They've been saying, like, "You always say that you never heard us laugh, huh?" Well, we do laugh. We laugh at you. Well, so that's what they say. But I've never heard them laugh, not once, not even in the beginning when it was crazy, when it was like, I was sure that there were real people behind it. There was no laughter ever.
Never.
To this day,
So
I've never heard it.
now they will say you're funny as shit. They'll say that, or like you are the funniest TI we've ever had. They'll say that. Now,
Um,
or there was one time, and this is crazy. One time I remember I told a joke in my head about something, and I started laughing at myself, and then I felt it. Like I could feel like multiple, like it turned into this like belly roll of a laugh I've never felt before, where I was almost laughing for like 5 people.
oh
Like
my
my whole
god,
body was filled with yeah, my whole body was filled with laughter, and yeah, that was very bizarre. I almost felt as if I was laughing for them, like they
maybe,
actually did find some of the conversation hysterical, and then I started
maybe
laughing for all them, yeah.
that they could be. I wonder about that, the laughter thing a lot. It's
Yeah.
interesting that you say that. Maybe you were laughing for all of them. Maybe it was, I don't know what it is, but um, I wonder if anybody's heard them laugh. I would like to know that somehow. So that'd
Yeah,
be
I would like
interesting.
yeah, this is something I hope a lot of people listen to this and ask themselves the same thing,
Yeah,
you know?
I don't
Alright,
know.
so talk about, like, a little bit of, like, if, like, whatever you're open with or you're okay
Yeah,
comfortable with sharing with everybody, a little bit of what you've been going through recently, and again, you don't have to disclose anything that you don't wanna disclose, but if you are open to sharing, like, a little bit of it, that would open dialogue up for some cool conversation.
yeah, absolutely. So, regardless, this whole experience started for me because of drugs and the entities. They made it believe that as if I was being surveillanced for drug use. That's how they introduced themselves for me. They had, after reliving the recent experiences, I realized that this has been going on for years, like 4 years, maybe three and a half. Uh,
Yeah,
they just always introduced themselves during psychosis. So I never was able to really comprehend what was happening at the time, or some instance of relapse or something like that that would come around. I wasn't sure what was happening, and I would just be like, you know what, it wasn't them. Fast forward, they introduced themselves to me, and I am like, okay, so I knew I wasn't crazy. There were people following me this whole time. And for months, I believed that it was because of only straight drug use. Time goes by, I realized it was bullshit. It was never real. It was just all them making me feel as if it was that. And I realize now why that was. I realize a lot because of this recent relapse that's happened to me. So I had been doing really good in life. Everything was going really well. And I had this slip
yeah,
up. And they, I, it had been like months, I don't know, 9 months or something like that. I had a small hiccup that happened a while back, but then I had this really big one, and they saw it coming, obviously, right? And they told me if I made this choice that they were going to go back to the way things were in the beginning, and I was just like, I'll be all right. And literally, the moment I did it, they changed the sound, the way it sounds. It went from me hearing my inner voice constantly. It was me hearing my inner voice as them. That's how they would communicate to me for months now. It's been like that. It would just be
yeah,
my inner voice, and I would know it's them because I would be not thinking of anything, and then all of a sudden it would just be constant, constant, constant. And I would know it's them. It'd be one tone always, just one voice, and they changed it immediately when I picked up to multiple voices
yeah.
externally sounding. It was voices I hadn't heard the first time. This time too, it was new voices, and
Wow.
yeah. So I mean, it sounds as if someone's right outside my window, literally. And
Right.
then I'm like, oh man, all right, so I'm gonna get through this, I'll be all right. And I just for like a day or two, I was just trying to like adjust to the way that sounds now. Now they're doing external sounding voices, new
Right.
sounds, and they're doing the inner voice, myself, and their selves in me. So my mind. So there's three different sounds that I can hear them now.
So
And
let me ask you something. When you hear the voices outside of yourself, do you believe that it's being projected outside of you?
I don't. the first time this happened, when I was first introduced to this experience, I believed it was external happening. I thought that there were people literally following me around. Right
Right.
now, I know better. Now I know better that it's not that. It's them
Okay.
tricking me into believing that it is.
Right.
So going through this the first time, I was unaware. I was I was just I was literally like sideswiped by this. I was not ready for it. And I believe people were outside external, but right now, even though if I do hear them externally, they
Right.
I know it's not someone else,
So
it's them.
the only reason I really bring that up is because I think it's important for people that are experiencing gang stalking, to to hear that, and I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Um, and I would never say that actual physical gang stalking doesn't happen. And I can only speak from my own experience when I say that it was all in my own mind. So somehow, whatever part of the brain it is um, that picks up ambient noise and filters out ambient noise. That's the part of the brain that is spoken to. That's the part that's split wide open that you and I have access to. So that's why you hear them in bathroom fans and running water and cars that are rolling down the street and in whirring fan sounds in your refrigerator and your microwave, because these are very safe sounds that your brain normally just filters out as being safe and not to pay attention to. It's ambient noise. Well, that's where the voices get commingled with,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, I always had to remind myself going through this process that everything is processed up here.
Mhm.
Everything, our sight, our hearing, our taste, our smell, right? It's all being processed up here. We have our environment that exists out here, but we process our environment and our reality all up here, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, the fact that have you ever smelled things that were not in your environment
They
because
have
of it?
played they have played smells from when I was a teenager, from, like, women
Right.
that I had dated, their
Yeah.
scent. Crazy,
Right. So
insane.
it really makes you realize that um, all these things are just concepts, an idea of the mind, right? If the technology exists or there's an entity out there that has the ability to make you smell things that aren't there, hear things that aren't there, it makes you realize that everything exists as a concept in our own mind,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
that's yeah, right. So they have the ability to manipulate our conceptual experience and our perception of our
Yeah,
environment.
exactly, yeah.
So um, I remember I went through a phase where they kept impressing on me the word onomatopoeia. So an onomatopoeia is a word um, that sounds like a sound. So like bam, oink, these kind of things.
Mhm.
Smash,
Okay.
right? So like
Yeah.
smash, like it actually sounds like it's smashing, right? Kind of like when you're watching an old Batman movie and they'd have the pow come
Oh,
up when they
yeah,
pop. Those are onomatopoeias. And that's what they use to their advantage, right? So the sounds that we hear commingle with the words that are being spoken, and then we believe that they happen outside of us. But for me, it was never happening outside of me. It was all happening inside. But man, if you don't know, you don't know. You'll go
yeah,
looking for a source for this where it's coming from.
yeah,
So I could hear a car rolling down the street and they're saying, Kevin, you're a piece of shit. And I'm thinking somebody's out in the sidewalk calling me a piece of shit. I'm
yeah,
going out there like with my hands in the air, like, yo, who's got something to say? Because that's
yeah,
such a douchebag. I'm like, yeah, you got something. God forbid there's a stranger out there. Now he's going to
yeah,
get the brunt of it. Like, you got something to say to me,
yeah, I hear
but
you.
that shit happens, and then with gang stalking, that's what happens. And then people go out there with cameras and they're like, I got him on my
Yeah,
phone. It's him right there. And the people are always look bewildered
yeah,
every time. They just look like they're like, what? I have no clue what you're talking about.
man. So now that you're saying that, right? So this first part of it was for me was the hearing them now, and I'm like, all right, I know that that's not real. There's nobody else out my window, and I'm sure of
Right.
it. I don't even know to go out there. The first time this happened, I would have gone outside. Now I'm aware of it. Um, but they transitioned to this. It continued on for me, this external sound, and it actually still is right now to this time, even to this day. But I'm aware of the things. But um, then the next couple of days after this happened to me, I went to a different state. I was out far in a different state, and I had an experience where these people approached us, me and my girlfriend at the time, who does not hear voices, she doesn't hear anything, but she's been like a saint with all of this because she's able to help me a lot of the times when there's something going on. But these people approached us, and the way that the experience was with them made me assume as if they were there for like for me or something, some surveillance for me. Now, the original way that these entities introduced themselves was through me believing that was being surveillance for drug use, and these people came over, started talking to us about taking our pictures and stuff. It was the weirdest thing. They wanted to take our pictures every single spot we were at. First time I was like, all right, that's fine. The second time I was like, this is a little weird. And now
That's
the
a little
voices
odd.
are, yeah, it's a little odd. I'm like, all right, well, nobody asks that many
No,
times.
no.
And they wanted to go in every single attraction we went to. They wanted to be with us there. And there's different attractions. So I was like, this is just weird, man. There's no reason for this. And then I can hear the entities starting in saying these different things. And those girls' voice talking about all the shit that they think that I'm worried about being surveillanced for is what it is. They're bringing up all my fears and they're
Yeah.
talking about it. And I'm like, I need to get the fuck out of here. I need to get out of here. This is, and I like took the whole experience really badly. And like my girlfriend was upset at me about it and everything. And I was like, I'm sure that these people are like, I had thought that they were there for me for whatever reason. Whether or not it's true, it's like, it's beside that
Well,
at this point.
here's the thing. It could be true and not true at the same
Exactly.
time. At the same time, right? So don't think for 1 second just because you hear the voices that other people aren't being manipulated. So my
Yeah.
girlfriend went through this. My girlfriend went through this too. And but she never heard the voices, but she was being manipulated heavily. Heavily. I mean, like just bizarre notions that were causing her to do crazy, harmful things. Um, so what happens is when the voices are being spoken to, and I'm just going to say at a deeper recess of the unconscious, you may not hear it, but it's still being registered as a notion of your own cognition. And you have very little choice but to follow through with that because you think it's your own idea, you know? So I use a scenario that I call the white, the white truck of apophenia. So apophenia is it's a condition where it's kind of a precursor to schizophrenia. And it's where a person essentially will start putting pieces of a puzzle together that don't exist, right? So let's say I have the ability to speak into your mind, right? And you don't hear it, but I'm going to speak it into your mind and plant the thought that white truck is following you. And I'll say it over and over again. That white truck is following you. That white truck is following you. That white truck is following you. You know how many white trucks there are on the road? Now you don't hear this, but that idea is in your head, right? And a fear is building up at a deeper recess. All of a sudden, you see a white truck, and boom, the trigger is set. Now you think that that white truck is following you, and then it'll just keep going. That white truck is following. So now here's the really crazy part of this manipulation, right? So let's take the example that you just had, with the people that were following you. They could have actually had the thought planted in their head, follow this couple. They're a good couple. Take pictures with this couple. And then the whole time that did I lose you?
I'm here.
There
Can
you
you
are.
hear me?
The whole time that that thought is being planted in their head, the thought is being planted in your head. Like, yeah, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think there's a lag though.
There you go. You're back. So the whole
Um,
time that that thought is being planted in their head, the thought is being planted in your head. This is a weird situation. They know what you're doing. So there's like a dual manipulation that's going on, at the same time to create this very weird scenario that's totally orchestrated just for your learning experience.
I think that there's a lag. Is there a lag right now?
There was, but I think it's okay now.
Um, how about now?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I'm going to try to pause it
Yeah.
and then I'll start it back up real quick.
Okay.
There we go. We're resumed. Just had to take care of that little bit of a lag. Yeah. So like, it's almost like a dual manipulation. There's a manipulation on their part and a manipulation happening on your part. And you're more aware of the manipulation if you're actually in tune with it, but they have no clue. you know
Yeah.
this this yeah, this happens a lot, but the whole thing is completely tailored and orchestrated for you and for your learning experience or for your detriment.
I do believe in that. I believe that there is some level of manipulation that's occurring at a deeper level where someone's subconscious. I mean, do you know what neuro linguistic programming is?
Yes.
So I think that I don't know if this is the same idea at the moment, but that concept obviously exists where you can be programmed at a certain level or kind of manipulated at a certain level that you're just unaware of, right? So I guess um, this situation, although not exactly that, I do believe maybe that there is a part where these people who had been appearing in the same situations I was in may or may not have been aware of their purpose in the this manipulation for me, or their manipulation, or the situation that I was in. Um, there was a couple other situations that ended up happening throughout the next couple of days uh, that was just really weird about people being in certain places in certain times. They were just saying things that I would hear that was only something I would understand, and it was weird, right? Um, it was just really weird. But uh, I
So do you ever stop and think about the fact that, or the possibility, that um everything is manipulated,
Yeah,
so eh, and it's crazy, like,
absolutely.
if you really let that thought settle in, right? That, like, for me, it's not a possibility. It's not even a probability. I know it for a fact that
Yeah,
the human mind is not only susceptible to manipulation, but is manipulated to a heavy degree.
absolutely.
Um, and then you begin to wonder how much of everything that we deal with is manipulated.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a scary, scary thought.
it is a scary thought. So I it's terrifying thought. The world is probably manipulated to their own whatever the narrative is or whatever the situation is that they want to control. Whoever it is that is controlling this, not just these entities, whatever the situation is, they're in the power.
Right.
They control it for their purposes. But I have no idea what my part in that would have to do with absolutely anything. So when it comes down to the entities, why would they give a shit whether or not I stay clean, whether or not I use, or what is their purpose in that? And then that is where everything just kind of throws haywire for me. I have no idea what.
And that is a very, logical, real question that I ask myself often, because the greatest manipulation is the manipulation that's not heard, right?
Yeah,
So why allow us to hear it? Why allow us, what targeted individuals or whatever, know that such a thing exists?
yeah,
I
really
I
good.
was right, right. So I'm way more heavily manipulated without hearing it,
Mhm.
because now that I hear it, at least I have the option to say, "No, I'm not doing that," or, but before that, who knows? Like, who knows how much of my life I believed I had free will, but
Mhm.
who knows?
Yeah, I think about that often too. And then I bring in
Yeah,
relapses that have happened throughout my life, my years. And if they wanted to control the situation, these entities, they would just make me stop, right? They could just literally make me not feel the effects of any type of drug. So they could just control the situation's outcome each time. They can make this happen, but they don't.
yeah,
They let me decide every single time. Whether I think I decide, I just assume I do. I hope, but maybe I don't. But
yeah,
it's just confusing every time. I don't understand why. I'm not someone special, so I don't know. Um,
yeah. It's almost as if we set the threshold for the manipulation. So, I mean, I have a 7-month-old daughter at home, and I look at her, and she's like the purest, most innocent thing that you could possibly lay your eyes on. She doesn't know what wrong is. She doesn't know what sin is. She doesn't know what bad is or evil is. She's just this perfectly pure human being, right? And we all come into the world innocent. We all come into the world pure, right? And then kind of as life goes on, we experience things. We're programmed television or whatever. We introduce things into our life that aren't beneficial and are toxic behaviors, and then we begin to kind of push that threshold of evil more and more and more forward. And I often wonder if there's, like, that conflict right there, the human conflict of always wanting to go back to that state of purity, and then this other presence behind the scenes that's always trying to push us towards being negative. And yet, if you really think about it, it's that constant push of being pushed towards a negative that makes us always want to go back to the positive, right? So, like, and I use the example of, like, let's say you have a guy that he's not a church going guy. but he does his thing. He goes to work, he takes care of his family, and then one day he believes he's possessed by a demon or he's under demon oppression. And in his oppression, he seeks out the church and he goes to the church and then he completely changes his life around. It dedicates his life to Christ and starts bringing his family. And now him and his family are much more spiritually aware and part of a church community and are doing better. Now, that never would have happened had it not been for the negative push to begin with.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So there's
Oh,
always
yes.
there always I feel like there always needs to be this excessive catalyst that pushes us to want to repel evil and negativity out of our life.
Like
And
this experience.
without that, we become stagnant and we're just content in who we are or possibly getting worse. And I don't want to take up too much, yammering away here, but I have another employee or coworker at work who at the age of 19 had an experience where he heard a demon in the side of his face laughing at him as he was listening to Pink Floyd, immediately changed his entire life right there. He was in some house like down the shore for senior week, ran out of the house and immediately converted over to Christianity. He's been living that way ever since.
For
Like,
sure.
and it impacted him at an early age. But had that never happened, the it would have, that completely changed the trajectory of his life. That one little incident scared him straight.
Yeah.
And I wonder this all the time. Do these entities know this? And is that their purpose? Is their purpose to scare us straight, as if like we get into a state where arrested development has occurred or we're on the wrong path and we have a very dualistic nature within us, like we know right from wrong. And I always want it to be better than what I was. Always. I would even portray that and lie about it. And then this happened. And then it was like this very elevated, exaggerated push. It was like a helping hand that came in the form of a fist that boom, like you need to go back. And and it changed my life.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I do believe, well, I think this also has changed my life for the better. I think it's done terrible things to my life also, and especially in the beginning. But now I think it's done. I see this experience differently than I did the first time it started. And I know that there's a lot of differences that have happened since. I don't know that I'm reliving the experience over again right now. I think that they are throwing things at me that they did in the beginning, see how I
Okay.
react. I do think that that's what's happening to me right now, and I full heartedly believe that my negative decisions in life, impact the outcome of this situation or whatever my current state of the situation is in. Um, had I not relapsed, I don't know if they would have changed the way things are. They made it different, and they made it different in a scary way to either deter me from going back or to show me something.
In what way? Just like a more exaggerated experience, or like what's like an example?
So the other day, after these people had followed me around and stuff like that, I
Yeah.
just like my girlfriend was done with the whole following people around thing. She was just didn't want to hear any more of it. And we like we were out in the middle of the woods, and I'm trying to get into we were literally out in the middle of the woods in like a camper just out there. We like to go out in the woods, and I'm walking out there, and I hear like all these little whistlings everywhere, and I'm looking around. There's nobody out there, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so I know it's them. It's got to be them. But now I'm
Right.
seeing apparitions out in the woods, like just almost as if it was shadow people, but
Yeah.
it's not. And they're moving around. I'm seeing people shadows move, like full apparitions of shadows move, not just at the side of my eyes. And then I'm hearing music play as because I play drums, so I hear actual music. I hear
Yeah.
it sounded as if like I was in a video game. They turned my
Yeah.
world into a video game that they were inserting whatever they wanted into that video game.
Right.
And everything they did was in like to put me in a state of panic. I realized now it was all just to put me into a state of fear to see how I reacted. And that scared me. But that was just that phase of it. It scared me a lot. And I'm realizing, okay, so all these external sounds I'm hearing, just don't react and it's going to be okay. That's the way to go through this. Just do not react and you'll get through it.
Right.
Because if you react, is when you screw yourself. Don't react. Even the real people that were there, if they were real, if they were really a part of the situation, if they were just manipulated to act out some part in this play, uh, the reaction that someone has is the destruction. I think for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I think I really truly believe that the only thing to fear in this life is our response to stimuli, the things that happen to us, our so you have cause and effect, and the manner in which we express our effect, the causes that come our way. It determines much, it determines people going to jail for murder or
yeah,
yeah,
so yeah, the the fears that people have, the fears that I have, I listed them out. I've been thinking a lot about them lately, and I'm realizing that everything that's happened to me since this incident, that relapse has happened, that they have done to me, is to instigate a fear of mine to make me react. The fears
yeah,
of people's thoughts about me, people's feelings, whatever. I'm sitting down at work trying to get through all these things, and I'm hearing the people around me that are sitting with me talking about me out
yeah,
loud, talking negative things, saying these negative things. It's not them; it's the voices trying to make me
right,
react to the situation. Everything they've been doing lately has been a way to make me react to a certain situation.
right,
And I think the best part so far is not reacting for me,
yeah,
but it's been a
yeah.
lot of
So
that lately.
it's definitely reflective to our own self perception, right? So if you're somebody that has very negative self image and you think poorly of yourself, that will be played on.
Yeah,
It's going to be exaggerated, and they'll actually mimic people's voices that are in your environment, so it sounds like it's coming from them, and you'll make a damn fool out of yourself.
yeah. That
Yeah,
right there, that's a big one. And that
yeah,
had it been the first time around, I would have failed already. I would have thrown the
right,
towel in. There's no way I would have gotten through that. But
right,
that's really tricky. That's a tricky one.
yeah. So I have this, and I don't want to say it's a theory, but it's a theory that's based off of my actual, experience with this, like the way that I have analyzed this experience. And I've shared it with a few people, so I genuinely believe that, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, how everything is processed in the mind, right? This is reality up here, right? I mean, reality is out here. I can feel it with my sense of touch and everything, but it's all being processed up here, and this is where they're interacting. So we have our external reality, right? Our environment, which is being processed in our mind. But if you think about your dream states, okay, and how what your dreams are is a way to cope with this actual reality. That's why they're always exaggerated, right? Like our dreams can be very scary. They can be very filled with anxiety, a lot, but they're exaggerated so that we're like kind of put into this environment where we handle very stressful and fearful situations in an exaggerated way so that we can handle them better in this environment, right? It's almost like a purge, if you will. So recent studies have shown that we dream all the time. Like right now, you and I are dreaming, right? We are recreating an entirely different version of this outside environment based off of our perception of it. And if we are in a heightened state of paranoia, or if we're in a heightened state of fear, the perception and the environment that we're creating in our mind in our dream state that we're actually utilizing to cope with this outside reality can be a nightmare. And what this occurrence does, this hearing voices, TI occurrence phenomenon, whatever you want to refer to it as, is it rips the veil open between the conscious and the unconscious, right? And that recreation of this reality that we're creating up here starts to spill over and commingle with this reality. And quite literally, your nightmare becomes a living world, right? It's as if our imaginations are actually active imaginations, and these entities, that's where they're at, that's what they play with. And I base this off of the fact that even while I'm dreaming now, I'm sure that you've actually had constructed dreams
Oh yeah,
with your
absolutely.
experience as well,
Yeah.
like they actually will construct your dream states with this.
Yeah. How's,
Are you still you're still there?
can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, there's a big lag again
You've
or
actually
something.
had like reconstructed Yeah, you've actually had like constructed dream states with this
Yeah.
where they'll actually like construct an entire dream. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'll hear
absolutely.
them in my dreams. Yeah, I'll hear them in my dreams talking to me as I'm going through these very fearful, traumatic, dream states. So I think that happens all the time,
Do,
all the
do they
time.
Do they still
and
talk
they'll
to the 3 common voices or the 3 common voices, the 2 male and the female that you always hear, do they still talk to you in your dreams now?
yes.
They do.
Yeah, so I would say yes, yeah. So I would say that 80% of my day, 80 to 85% of my day is in complete silence now. I don't it's like a very, very, very slow withdrawal. A member in one of the communities said it perfectly. He said that pendulum sways for a while. So it's a very slow withdrawal. And the majority of the time is first thing in the morning as I'm waking up and I'm coming out of those lower sleep frequencies and into my awake state. They're there and they're there heavy still with that high pitch ringing that's like it makes my head feel like it's expanding.
Yeah,
And then that goes away within about a half an hour. And then I might hear them periodically throughout the day, like they'll comment on something. It's never negative anymore or anything like that. It's yeah,
random.
just random stuff. Yeah. Or if I'm
What
having like a train of yeah, if I'm having like a train of thought going, they'll chime in with their 2 cents about it or something like that. Or yesterday, like I didn't hear them for hours, and then they chimed in and they said something about Kamala Harris, and I'm like, that's just some random. Like
That's
I don't even
interesting.
care about politics. Thanks. Yeah.
Since I've had this relapse, they've changed the way that they respond to me. In fact, lately, they've been saying way more than they ever have. Not in months have they put in this much input, and it's weird because they generally don't. They've actually said, like, for months before this, that they were doing something similar to what you've just described, except for one random day, they entered my dreams again. I mean, they always make. I think that they create my dreams every single night. I think
Yeah.
actually, but I don't ever hear them anymore, except for one night. Like a couple months ago, I heard the 3 voices I've heard in the beginning that were always there. They were all there, and they were all like teasing me or torturing me. It was like they were all on a cloud, pointing down, laughing at me, doing whatever it was, and it was a terrible nightmare. But I haven't heard them since, and
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting that I remember that day so vividly that I heard them again after months of not hearing them. I finally heard them again. I was like, "Oh my god!" But yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I don't know what it is, what it means. It just yeah, not sure. It's just interesting you were talking
Yeah.
about
I mean,
it.
there's so much that happens while we're sleeping, and in our consciousness, like the deeper, lower frequencies of our unconsciousness. And here's like a real crazy part of this too. So I remember when I was like a few months into this and I'd be at work and I ride a forklift at work and it's a big warehouse. So everything echoes off the metal walls. I would often hear like, man, like 5 or 6 different layers of conversation going on,
Oh wow,
all very conflicting in nature.
yeah,
You know, the one voice is saying how great of a person I am, and the other one's saying what a piece of shit I am. The other one's talking about all these like esoteric, philosophical things. The other one's talking about like an episode of Family Guy, like just all oh, dude, all over the place simultaneously. But then when I would get off the forklift and I didn't hear that echo, it would go back to one voice, which tells
interesting.
me that yeah, which tells me that at all times, at least during that time, there was just a cacophony of nonsense going on, all
It's
conflicting in nature that
it's
my
them.
brain was
Yeah.
picking up. Yeah,
Yep.
that my brain was picking up and, was having a hard time dealing with. I mean, you don't have to go absolutely insane, but it's completely understandable. Like, it is completely understandable if somebody just loses their damn mind going through this. But now, right, so now I'm at work and I ride the forklift down, it's still the same reverberation off the walls, and I don't hear them at all. So once I came into a place of equanimity within myself and my own mind, that it just shut them up, I guess. Or, this was, who knows, maybe it was once I cleaned up my unconscious arena, it just wasn't happening anymore, but
Yeah. Or
you know,
maybe it didn't bother you anymore. Maybe you didn't
well,
care if people were
I don't
talking about
know.
it.
I have to go by what to me is objective to me, the moments when I heard the voices and when I didn't hear the voices, and how bad they were in certain times, and then how they lessened over a period of time, and what happened to me internally that made that happen. That's the only objective evidence for myself because it's not like I can prove that to somebody that actually But that does seem to be a common theme in a lot of people's testimony, that you really have to come into a place of self-assuredness and inner peace, and really kind of fall back on some sort of a spiritual or philosophical ideology that resonates with you. That you're ready to build off of as your foundation, and that seems to be like a really good way to go to really start having this thing fade off into the distance. But it takes time. It takes a really long time.
Yeah, I agree. I've been beating myself up a lot about this whole relapse recently. I'm thinking like I have to go back to square one, but someone was telling me it doesn't go back if you don't want it to or something like that. And I've learned so much, so I feel like now I just progress all the tools I've learned, and it's all part of the experience, right? I guess it's all just
Yeah,
part of the experience that you go through.
yeah,
If there is ever an end. So
yeah, yeah. All right, cool. That's actually great timing right there. We're at 50 minutes. Um, yeah. So I mean, just a quick word of advice for anybody, and this is something that I had shared back and forth with you. I mean, I relapsed for, keep in mind, 14, 15 months ago, I was sleeping in a tent under a bridge in St. Louis, Missouri. Like I was just strung out, was homeless, and then this happened within a week of that. I was made my way back to Philadelphia, and then I got myself into a rehab, and then that's when this, really the 24/7, V2K happened. And one of the biggest things that I had to do was forgive myself, right? Like, because nobody will beat me up worse than I will, right? Nobody will talk more negatively to me than I ever have. Nobody's going to say more derogatory shit to me than I've ever said to myself. And the voices would always feed off of that. But when I was able to get to a place where I kind of cleaned everything up and actually forgave myself and learned to not live in the regret or the remorse of my actions in the past, then I was actually able to move on. But for as long as I was holding on to that shit and holding on to the past, they would continue to play on it. And I was never able to actually move forward in life. So that's all. Just to, forgive yourself. Shit happens. You're a human being. That's why they put erasers on the end of pencils. You know what I mean? I say it to myself. I'm like, yeah, you get that on these big jobs. Sometimes, sometimes shit happens. Yeah,
yeah,
doesn't matter
sometimes shit
what it is.
happens.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
you got that right.
All right, dude.
Yeah,
So yeah, thanks for joining me tonight. I'm glad that this worked out. And yeah, I'll go ahead and post this on YouTube now. But thank you for sharing your testimony, Eddie. Really appreciate it, your time and your transparency and your openness. And this was a fantastic discourse. I'm sure a lot of people will get something out of it.
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Thanks for having me. I'll
All
catch
right,
up with
buddy.
you whenever. Take it easy.
All right, take care.
See ya.